Hello, I'm here today with Marian Poeppelmeyer, author of Finding My Father, Beyond Tragedy, Through Trauma, and Into Freedom. Welcome, Marian.
Oh, welcome. Welcome, Faye.
So, first of all, I want to talk with you, about your life as an author. So tell me, does writing energize you or exhaust you?
Writing energizes me. I can totally get in with it and be gone for hours. So I have to really take notes and come back if I can't run away for hours to write.
There you go. Tell me about an early experience when you learned that language has power.
Meaning written language or verbal language?
Either one.
Well, unfortunately, verbal language because of my stepdad who was harsh. Fortunately, I learned it that way. But as far as written, from a young age on, I'm talking like second, third grade, I was compiling poetry, writing my thoughts down. And so I think I've always have known the power of the written language.
Okay. All right. Were you reading books and all when you were in second, third grade too?
Yes.
Right.
Read novels and, yeah, of course, the schoolwork, but
Sure.
novels and books.
Library day was my favorite day of the week when I was in that age. Okay. Is there an author that you truly admire?
Wow. That was a tough question. I have authors in all different levels, different categories that I love to read. In beginning to write a novel or a book, I thought I was going to write my first novel first. And in order to understand characters, oh dear, favorite author. He's famous. He wrote A Walk to Remember.
Right.
For John.
Oh, yeah. Was it Nick? Yeah. Yeah, I know it's at the tip of my tongue, but I understand.
Yeah, I have his books sitting over on a shelf, but I won't take time to get them.
Right.
I meant to look up his last name.
And that's okay. Anybody that knows A Walk to Remember will know.
Yeah, we'll know who that is. And he's written a lot of his books are made into movies. And I was very intrigued by how he wrote historical. He writes about North Carolina, all those little towns, and he creates stories out of them. So I've always been fascinated by how he develops his characters.
Right. Okay. What kind of research do you do in preparation, especially for this book?
Yeah, for Finding My Father, what I did was I didn't do the research all at once. I did it as I encountered the topics and knew what topics I wanted to weave in. I would stop from the writing, then maybe for days I'd be researching.
Wow.
I'd be online ordering a book, like, and for the first part of my book, it's called Act 1, Beyond Tragedy. That was a culmination of research from the web on the plane bombing, all kinds. I bought a book, mainline, or devoured it, but the rest came from my mom's letters and conversations with her over she died when I was in my 40s. So, everything that she had told me up to then. Plus, then when I did research in my book, people find out that, yes, it is about my healing from this tragedy and how to move through it, but which we haven't told you yet what the tragedy is. So we'll get to that in a moment. But thoroughly research deep topics of babies' trauma and mothers in the womb. I'm a big researcher. I was a political science major. I know what's good sources and bad sources, how to go. If I saw a quote somewhere, I dug for the book and the author of that quote and got it exactly. So I spent hours on the web, hours reading books, thumbing through books. I have a stack of books just for finding my father.
Wow. Wow. So you didn't just take it all out of your brain. I love that.
No, yeah. I give meat for my audience, for the readers.
Very good. Very good. So, what did you edit out of Finding My Father?
Okay, what I edit out. I was thinking hard on this because it is about finding my father. I started in my 40s wanting to know who my real dad was, and even through my childhood wanting to know. With my cousins in South Carolina, when we met them for the first time in 11 years, my sister and I actually asked them, could we go to our dad's grave and do a seance? So I didn't put that in the book. I realized the whole book's written, and that totally did not get put in. Just to know him. And, it might have caused a lot of confusion for people, but that got edited out by default, and I may not have put it in because I could always use it when I speak,
Right.
the desperation to know the Father. But praise God, nothing happened.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Marian, what does literary success look like for you?
For me, well, since I just recently released my book with a global book launch, I think years from now, I'll be able to look back and put, wow, that was success. The book's gone so far. This book's taken me this far in the direction. I have an inkling as to where it's going to lead me, but I don't know yet. For right now, what success means to me is the message in my book. It's not just a story about me. I've written it so that everyone who picks up the book literally going to be able to find pieces of their healing, launch onto the road to healing, begin their road to healing because of it, or receive full healing from their tragedies, traumas, losses, however it touches them, their fatherhood, father relations, or whatever, they're going to find healing. That's how I've written the book. So how I'm judging success now is I'm getting people who are reading it, texting me, messaging me. My goodness, Marian, one since the launch, bought the book, took it home, went on finished the book, took a 2-mile hike, and she says, Marian has totally shifted my healing. Thank you.
Wow.
That is success. One life is changed, one life altered. So that's how I measure.
There you go. There you go. All right, we're going to shift just a little bit, and we're going to talk specifically about Finding My Father. So, would you share briefly with us the backstory behind the book?
Yes. You know how, for the audience out there, we just had another shooting in a high school. And since 9/11, really since Oklahoma City bombing, there's been bombings, atrocious mass killings, from Sandy Hook. Las Vegas was huge. There's so much of that going on now. And I'm here to let everyone know, as the nation and these families are impacted, unfortunately, this is not new to our nation. My story literally begins November 1st, 1955. My mother was 31, my dad was 31, my sister was 15 months old. My dad left Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to go to Oregon on a business trip that his boss assigned him to go on, and landed in Denver, Colorado. Within 10 minutes off, the plane totally blows up outside of Denver over beet fields. And all 44 people on board were instantly killed. And that was a famous bombing. That then they didn't know it was a bombing. Within 7 days, they detected sabotage. And indeed it was. A man put a bomb on the plane to collect insurance from his mother. And he could about killing the 43 other people on board.
Wow.
So my dad happened to be on that plane. And that's where my book begins. That's the backdrop of it. And how did my mom live through it? What did she do? And then the book later, it takes you, flips forwards 40 years to how did it impact me.
Right. Wow. So, and I know that you share this in your book, but just briefly, how did that tragedy that happened before you were born, right?
Mm-hmm.
You weren't here yet.
That's right.
So how did that, because you weren't born yet, how did that affect your life?
Well, first of all, at a young age, I was very aware that we didn't have a daddy and that there was no daddy home. And at some point, I knew that a man put a bomb on the plane, and I knew that he had had the death penalty. How did it affect me growing up was in multiple ways, which people find out in the book. But as a young girl, at a time when most families were intact, mother, father, here I am without a dad going to school. So it made me feel left out. Then when my mom remarried, I no longer had the same last name as my mom and dad. So it separated me again because the divorce rate wasn't what it is now.
Right.
We didn't have blended families. Children living in fatherless homes were only around 8% of, not all children, but 8%, 5 to 8%, depends upon how you read the stats, of households with no fathers.
Mm.
So very small compared to 32% today.
Wow.
It's quadrupled. So I was really alone, set apart, and it affected me rejection-wise, affected me, my whole self-image, my whole self-esteem, affected me. And I saw God up there with the baseball bat, that he would leave me, he would abandon me.
Mm.
It really messed me up as far as the father image and the God father image.
Right. Wow.
Does that answer your question?
It does. But I also heard you tell somebody at a conference that we were recently at about how the babies in the womb can actually feel and hear something about those traumas.
Yes, as I became uncorked emotionally in my 40s, I began having visions and everything. And the healing process was between me and Jesus in the middle of church services, people praying for me, whatever. I didn't go to a professional counselor when I broke down, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't cope in life anymore. But it was then, when doing the research for my book, that I learned. But what I learned was, and what I essentially learned back, I thought I was going nuts, and a special speaker at a conference from Desert Stream Ministries, I told him everything. I said, I feel like I am crazy. I'm seeing things. I'm feeling sensings, and from being in the womb, really like before birth kind of reactions. And so, yes, the answer to your question is yes. What I learned was that everything my mother felt, every bit my mother felt, heard. I was in the womb. I was 6 months in. I heard everything, felt everything. But also, when a woman goes into such traumatic stress, which my mom did, she, when she heard the news, she grabbed my sister, picked her up in the crib, and screamed.
Mm.
So I heard my mom scream. So physiologically, her hormones dumped into mine, And there's even hormone things. And I found out all of this knowledge. So yes, a mother going through hard times, traumatic times, you really need to be telling your OBGYN that your husband left you, your husband's kicking you, or you're having stress on the job, because it will impact and could impact the baby. And it depends upon the mother how well she can adapt to it. But I discovered that was why I went on ceaseless crying when all my buried emotions from the loss of my dad surfaced. It was like 20, instead of a chart 1 to 10, I was on a 1 to 20, and I was a 20.
Right.
And
That's just, yeah, I'm sure there are people who may or may not have known that. I did not know that until I heard you talking to our mutual friend. And it was just, it was kind of like this, oh my. Well, it's no wonder then that there are people who are walking around completely unsure why they're feeling like they are, that it may very well have come from the time in the womb.
Could even have been a really hard delivery. I mean, it's just amazing. And I mean, the studies were done after 9/11. I don't know if you want me going in depth, but studies after 9, there were 1,700 pregnant women at the time of 9/11. So they are able to do a study, and they picked out 38 women who exhibited post-traumatic stress disorder from being there. And they took their babies, they took their hormonal changes and the babies, and then a month after the baby was born, they retook them again, and the babies mirrored their mothers, only in smaller percentages.
Wow.
There's a direct, and all the studies out there from the medical field, from the prenatal field, from the psychological, neurological field, there's so much they can do now that they could not do in the 1950s.
Right.
Okay. With all the 3D, 4D imaging, they can literally track everything. And that dramatic trauma, even if the mother bounces back, can still lead that child to experience PTSD, experience hypertension, ADD, ADHD, learning disabilities, late talking. The list goes on. I mean, it's I think even diabetes is one of them, all of them, and I actually exhibit a lot of those.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I want to also, because I know that we humans tend to use things like that to blame. It's not the mother's fault.
Right.
Any of that happened, and it's not learning that about yourself, that some of the stuff that you're dealing with came from back then. It's not a reason to find blame. It's a reason to find healing.
Amen. Absolutely. Yes, not a reason to find blame. Is a definite reason for healing. Yeah, there's things out of control of a mother. Mother could be the best mother, and
right.
She's in a car accident. And I put a disclaimer in my book when everyone picks it up and reads it, that if they are under stress and they are pregnant, to open up to their OBGYN about it. And there's a lot that can be done. I mean, it's amazing what's available now to help crisis mothers to protect the baby. It's amazing what they can do.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you had learned about the truth of what had happened. You learned that there was an airplane crash, or the crash, and you learned that the man that did the bombing was sentenced to death, right? But how old were you when you learned like the fullness of that?
Well, I learned all that essence pretty well. I remember being in a senior senior honors history class where we delved into subjects deeply, and in the 70s, there's a big craze to do away with capital punishment.
Right.
We're supposed to discuss things. Well, for me, I kept my mouth shut. I was with the cream of the crop in my class. I wasn't there. I was just kind of like under the radar right there with them, you know. So I landed in the class, but I kept my mouth shut because they're all anti-capital punishment. And here I was wanting to cry my eyes out. And I wasn't about to cry in class. No one there knew my story. And so for us, we felt justified. But it was really a number of years ago when I knew I wanted to put together my book and my story. It's been burning me for 20 years. I began doing, my husband already knew about the FBI story. We bought the book. I could not pick, even though I was healed, I could not pick it up and read. But when I plowed into writing my book, he a number of years ago had found a book called Mainliner Denver by Andrew Fields. And I'm giving him kudos because he was a prosecuting attorney in Colorado who in 2005 produced this incredible, well-researched book. The bombing and the case, the court case, very great detail. So I had to plow into all this research to put the pieces together to include it in a chapter in my book. I don't cover the case because I don't want to hear about the case.
Right.
I don't want to give any glory to the man who did the killing.
Right.
I don't. So that my focal point is the family. How did my family died, and then how did it impact me? Clear throughout my life until God says it's now time to deal with it.
Right. Okay. So what really compelled you? What put, you said 20 years in the making. What really pushed you, caused you to not be able to not do this book?
In me, ever since I really got my ultimate freedom and healing, I really wanted to make my dad's life count. And I wanted the story to bring many to Christ and many who know him to really draw closer to him. But when 9/11 happened and I sat there, I was working in a very large church, agonizing pain, riveted body, and they were all praying while I had my head buried in a pillow screaming. I could identify with all of them. And then sitting back, let's keep moving forward as the mass killings and shootings have increased and increased and increased. I knew I've walked through the other side. And I know exactly where all these families, no matter what faith they're at, no matter what walk, they're all going to be dealing with the same crucial elements I had come to grips with in my 40s. And I know the answer. I know the solution. And I thought, man, I could potentially really help if I can reach people. And then as I was writing my book and recognizing the overlaying themes, it can help anyone who's been through any losses, who can't seem to get unstuck in life, who can't seem to get ahead in life. All could be intertwined to somewhere in your past, somewhere something. And I know the answer. And so I knew it was time to write the book, and I landed right into Author Academy Elite. Best choice I ever made, and that was it. I was almost going to write another book at the time of applying, and I thought, no, I've got to do this one now, Finding My Father.
Download. There you go.
I knew it was a message for today because people in our nation have questions. Why did that guy shoot? What's this? What's that? What's going on with our nation? People, there's different types of trauma. One, the initial victim And then there's secondary trauma from the immediate family members, immediate enclave of people involved. And then there's what's called tertiary, third level trauma. That's the rest of the nation
Right.
getting traumatized. So we're getting traumatized and traumatized and traumatized as a nation.
Mm.
And we either become desensitized to it, but that's because we're all stuffing and stuffing and stuffing. So my book is timely right now. It's a message of hope, message of freedom for anyone who has had a long road to walk in life or who's been impacted by any one of these unfortunate mass shootings or killings.
Right. Okay. Last question. What is it that you hope that your book achieves in the lives of your readers?
In the lives of my readers, I am hoping that one, as I said before, they'll start embarking on their own road of freedom, that they'll be connected more with the real Heavenly Father in heaven. If they don't know him now, that they'll be touched and drawn towards him and his love, which is very eminent in the pages of my story. That they will, if they already know Christ, they'll draw deeper to him. But I'm really hoping my readers leave with finding and choosing, because it's a choice to embark on your road of freedom, that they will choose to take the next steps towards wholeness and healing. And often we don't even know we need it. I didn't. You got to read my book. I didn't know I needed healing.
Right.
I wanted God to bring my husband a job. I wanted us not to be poor anymore, and get us out of here, Lord. I mean, I wanted our marriage healed, all the superficial, but he took me deeper. Since you can see my hands, he took me deeper.
Right.
And really brought forth real healing. So my whole aim is that real healing will occur because people can live beyond their tragedy. They're not identified by it. They don't need to be identified by their trauma, but it's not an easy thing to walk through. It's not an easy thing to forgive when such horrendous acts have been done against you. And I know this. Forgiveness is very difficult.
Yes.
And should not ever be rushed. So I'm hoping to guide people. I'll be offering courses and coaching classes. I'll take individuals deeper and deeper. My website will offer some free, introductory little courses, videos, whatever, to help jumpstart people. But then they can also, they can offer to choose me to coach them through it or find their own means for healing for the rest of their journey.
Right.
journey.
So go ahead.
Oh, so I aim that my book will really impact the nation at this time. Fatherlessness is a huge subject of mine, and I can teach on it. That was a concept I didn't have. I identify with fatherlessness. I identify with the orphan spirit, and I want to see people broken free from that. So they're all intertwined. The correlation between fatherlessness and these tragedies, correlation, and I want to be a part of that healing.
So when a person finishes your book and they're thinking, wow, I want to have that freedom that Marian has, you're going to have opportunities for them to get in touch with you so that you can help them walk that path to that freedom.
Yes, and no two will be alike. Yeah, I'm not for cookie cutter 7 steps and you're free.
Right.
I don't operate that way. Mine was definitely different. No one's healing is going to look like mine. It is a reeling story. That's a description on the back of the book. It is a very reeling story of what I went through. But yes, and they can go to Marian Poeppelmeyer, Marian, P as in Paul, OEPPELMEYER.com. Another link would be findingbook.com. It'll take you to the same site. So if you remember findingmyfatherbook.com, it'll take you straight to it. You can touch base with me and find help. But can I share just one more thing? Do we have time, Faye?
Sure.
Because it's kind of two-story. When Faye was interviewing me, I didn't quite know which way to go. And here's the book again, so you can see it. The other side of the story, Faye, is that for over 20 years, I've been wanting to meet adults who were children at the time who lost their parent, aunts, uncles, relatives, on that same plane bombing. And I'll repeat, it was the first ever plane bombing over U.S. soil. Very historical, a lot of historical facts. You can go on my website, find a lot of those are listed there. But side aim is I'm wanting to pull together find those other children. That's why I'm sharing it here, because you never know who's going to be watching or listening. And I really would love to have us meet in Denver, Colorado, and have a time for more resolution. There's some eyewitnesses still alive in Denver, Colorado. There's high interest in Denver, Colorado, on their major Channel 4 news every year. One of them, high event, they commemorate it, they remember it. And I want to go to that town, literally. And although many of the 9/11 people, rescuers, are long and gone, many of them are still alive. A lot of their families are. I want to personally thank them for what they did that night. So that's a real sidebar to what I hope will come from my book, that I will find those people and that we'll be able to meet, have more resolution and closure. And I want to say thank you for Colorado area for what they did that night.
Wow. All right, you've brought me to tears a couple of times now. It's time to end this.
Yeah, there's hope and freedom. Yes, and I got it. Yes.
Yay.
There is. I'm telling you guys, there's so much freedom when you allow the Father in. There's so much freedom. When you allow him to dig underneath the carpet and free you from stuff they never even knew you had. And so, yes, it's a sad part. There is such life at the end, such life and freedom, which I never could have experienced if I didn't walk through it.
Right, right. Well, Marian, I thank you so much for coming on here and sharing about your book and sharing about your life. And I can't wait to see what happens in people who will read your book.
Thank you so much, Faye, for this opportunity. You're a great friend. Glad we met and that we can support each other, and looking forward to doing more things with you in the future.
All right. Thank you now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.